Maybe now I had found my niche as far as the college basketball season is concerned. We'll keep an eye on it now if there is, if it continues, and if I find a little life and I can find my way. The one thing I didn't like with the college basketball, I know this is a tiny little point, but it's been driving me crazy, so I'll get it out there. And this is where these conferences got to stop with the idea of trying to fill their building up. You see what they're doing with St. John's and Georgetown tonight? And a very good story, by the way, today in the New York Times by Hari Ariton, a Hall of Fame writer who is a great guy and a tremendous, not one of the best basketball writers of all time. I mean, literally. I mean, you know, Bob Ryan, you got to put Pete Vesey in there, although he's not one of my favorites. I mean, you know, but Harvey's right there on a great Hall of Famer. Anyway, he wrote a great story today on Chris Mullen in the New York Times today, and Mullen trying to get this St. John's scenario fixed up. And the one, let me read you the one quote that I thought was interesting. And Louis Carnesecca, still alive. He's the, you know, him and Lapchek at St. John's. And Carnesecca, of course, 93 years of age, and still the Patreon as far as the program is concerned, and you know the mentor and everything else. Sometimes that's been a disadvantage with St. John's, a team I used to follow. But you know, Mullen was just basically talking about all the ideas that he got from Louis, and I like the one. See if I can remember where I found it now in the story. He had one about bad days and what he tries to teach his team at St. John's, and they've been an up and down year. They've, you know, obviously they've struggled in the conference. They have somehow though beaten Duke and Villanova. Now, Villanova missing two starters at the time, but they were beating Duke and Villanova. They beat them this year. As far as the regular season is concerned, that's a good win against Duke. Anyway, he was referring to his team and how bad they've been and up and down and everything else. One practice at a time and everything else, hanging there and what have you. And this is 30 years to the day was Mullen going to rehab. Remember, he went to alcohol rehab, and he had a big message to his team the last few days about what you think happened 30 years to the day, and he brought up to his team alcohol rehab, and he said one practice at a time, one day at a time, trying to get his team to focus on just what they can do on a day-in, day-out basis. And, of course, Carnesecca. Now, let me see if I can find the quote from Louis. And it was about when you have a bad day, what to do about the bad day, and try to bounce back and see if we can find it. I will find that in a minute. Anyway, I don't like, in fact, what St. John's and what the Big East has done here. You see what the Big East is doing tonight? Big East is having St. John's play Georgetown. That's the 8-9 game, or whatever round it is. You know, that's the slot where if you finished up, you play there. But, you know, slots are made to be broken. I mean, they're playing tonight at 7 o'clock, okay? You know what the next game is for the winner? Tomorrow at noon. Against Xavier, no less. Now, I mean, that is absolutely absurd. Now, I know they have a 10-team league, and maybe it's a little weird about how you can set it up where it's fair for everybody. But look how the ACC does it. If you play in the afternoon, you play in the afternoon the next day. If you play at night, you play at the night the next day. Syracuse beat Wake Forest last night. So what do they get? They get the late game the night against North Carolina. All right, that's fair. BC played yesterday afternoon. So what does BC get? They get, obviously, they get the early game today because they played the early game yesterday. So which is fair. They play the early game yesterday. They put the Louisville game against Florida State up first today. So they gave BC an opportunity to play the second game, give them a little break. And then they played Notre Dame, late yesterday afternoon. So Notre Dame, to be fair, plays the early game tonight. That's the way you do it. I mean, you give his team as much of an opportunity to rest as you possibly can. So somehow the Big East has figured, and Big East should be better than this. All right, the Big East, I know it's not the old Big East, but the Big East should be better. I know this is only me going crazy about it, but it bothered me. Georgetown and St. John's are playing tonight at 7 o'clock, and then Georgetown, the winner, and St. John's plays tomorrow at noon at Madison Square at the Garden against Xavier. No, I mean, you can't have Xavier play tomorrow at 2:30? You can't at least make it an afternoon game? I know you want to sell the tickets, and I know that's the most important thing you concern yourself with. And, you know, I know it's a little tricky. You can't have St. John's Georgetown play today at 4:30 and then have the DePaul Marquette game be playing at 7. You can't do that. You can't figure out a way to give the and I know the Georgetown St. John's, it's the 8-9 game, so the 8-9 game gets stuck with the 1 seed. I understand that. But if you're going to play the 8-9 game at night, the first round, you can't have them come back and get up at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, get home at midnight, wake up in 7 hours and go play another game. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not the way you do these things. That really bugged me for some reason. I don't know. And so the winner of Georgetown St. John's tonight has to go play Xavier tomorrow. Now, let me see if I can find you this this whole scenario with Louis. I'm going to have to read this backwards and forwards to make sure I get the exact quote. Okay, here's what he said. Mullen always appreciated how Cornaceka, still at 93, a patriarchal presence around St. John's, how he became less demanding in the face of adversity, how during Mullen's freshman season, the diminutive coach, affectionately known as Louis, walked into the locker room after an unsightly first-half effort against Georgetown and told his players they had had a figurative bowel movement on the Madison Square Garden floor, so go clean it up, as much of it as possible, and then wipe it from their memory bank. And as Mullen said, I don't come in and break TVs when we lose. Practice, practice, practice. Coach Cornaceka did the same. You maintain that level of routine, and it will work out. So Chris Mullen tonight we root for against Georgetown, and then they can sleep in cots downstairs the Garden, wake up and play Xavier tomorrow morning. And unbelievable. We continue here on Mad Dog Unleashed at 23 after the hour.